what's up, everybody? I already introduced myself, but I'll do it once again. My name is Jackie, and my radio show name is Ghostess, otherwise known as Ghost Hostess. And welcome to Experience Points. Um, Today, I was thinking it'd be neat to kind of like go into some games I haven't really like talked about. Some games I haven't necessarily played lately, but that's not really the requirement, for this show. These are more games that I've been kind of like revisiting in different ways lately. And the first one I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit was is a game very near and close to my heart. A character or a game known by Yomawari Midnight Shadows. Before I go into that, I would like to mention, hey everybody in chat. I think of the people we have in chat right now, it's some of my friends from around the world, well, around the U.S. at this moment. But hey, how's it going, you guys? I think that's Harvey, Jade, and Mishka. I don't know if any of my other friends are there, but hey, what's up? Um, anyways, yeah. So Yamawari Midnight Shadows, game created by Nipponichi Software, a subdivision of Nipponichi Software. The company Nipponichi is known for creating games like Disgaea. I think that's how you say it. Disgaea, Disgaea, Disgaea. I never played the games, but they seem pretty weird, pretty ridiculous. That's kind of the point of the games is they're very over the top like RPG type games, where like attacks will do like a million damage. Or I never. They seem interesting. I know a lot of people like those games. There's a game. They do a lot of anime games that I don't really know really well. There's like one game called like Cave of a Thousand Witches, a Night of a Million. Hey, B. um, a friend in the other room and one of the other stations waving at me. But yeah, a few other games. Not really like my cup of tea. Some games that I'd like to maybe like check out, maybe possibly at some point. I haven't heard really great things overall about the games before. That makes it seem like I'm saying that I've heard bad things about them. I haven't heard anything about them really, honestly. Like not a lot of people talk about Nipponichi Software. I feel, unless it's about Disgaea. But whatchamacallit. Yeah, these especially more of these like sub games. Yamawari might be the most popular one, maybe possibly. Along with Yamawari, there's a few other games that are under their sleeve. Actually, now that I think about it, there's a game that is made by that subdivision studio that's been really popular lately called Mad Rat Dead. I think that's what it's called, Mad Dead Rat. I've heard good things about it. I'd like to check it out at some point. Though, yeah, like some of the other games, they all have. There's this one game by them. It's called like HT at symbol question mark TOL something. I'd have to find like the actual like name of it and maybe say it later. But they done that. Um, there's this other game that, oh man, that's a whole story. There was this game I was telling my friends about this. I was really excited for, um, because when I discovered Yomawari Midnight Shadows, it was like a game no one ever talked about, and I played it, and I was like, wow, this is like an amazing game. I love this game. Like, there's got to be like I felt like I'd like found this like indie studio that nobody ever talks about, and I was like really excited to like check out some of their other stuff. And it just so happened that around the time I beat that game, there was like a new game being put out by them in the works, which I always remember. I always forget the exact name of. It's the Liar Princess and the Blind Prince, and it's like a storybook type game. It has a really pretty art style. I really like the characters, but unfortunately for me, the game doesn't really. It just didn't quite catch me. I really like the story, and the music is beautiful. Oh my god! But like, the gameplay is just kind of lacking. I'll say. That's my personal opinion. I'm sure there's people who really, really liked and enjoyed the game a lot. I think for myself, I wanted to enjoy the game, but I just couldn't get past kind of like how like kind of repetitive the gameplay was, which is really unfortunate because I was really excited for it. I bought it when it first came out, which I think it was like it might have been $40. I think it probably was 20, but I feel like it was almost like $40. Um, because I was just like really excited, and then it kind of let me down a little bit, man. But yeah, like that game, um, I'm sure has its own like dedicated little community though. But of the like games that I really love, oh, point of this episode being that like these games I basically like discovered by watching people or let's players online play these games. And it led me to eventually play them myself or just remember them very fondly. And for Yomawari Midnight Shadows, I oh I completely forgot about this. Um, I watched. I used to watch a lot of Game Grumps, and I still occasionally do. But I remember, I think it was one Halloween they played Yomawari Night Alone, a few episodes. Um, So they played that game, but they listed the title of the game in the on the video as Yomawari Midnight Shadows, which is wrong. Um, because Yomawari Midnight Shadows is actually the second game they were playing the first. Um, which is really funny because I saw the title of that, looked it up. I found that it was on PS4, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm gonna grab it. Screw it, like why not? I'm pretty sure it was on sale at the time too, and I was like, oh, perfect. Like I'm really interested in this. So I ended up getting it. Turns out that the first game isn't even on PS4. It's only the second game, and that's the only game that appeared for me. So that was the one I got. I learned later that it was the second game, but I didn't know for a while. Um, I'm still, I like at this point, I'm trying to kind of like play through it a little bit and show like my friends, but it's a bit of a slow game. It's got a lot of lulls. It's hard to keep people's attention on it, which is totally understandable. I get it. But I haven't played the first one. Second game, I'd love to show people because it's just such a neat game. Um, yeah, I ended up one of my like friends who I don't talk to as much as I did before. But we still talk occasionally. Me and them, they came over one day, and I think my parents might have been gone, because I can't imagine us playing the game and enjoying it. A very jump scary heavy game, uh, without like having like woken them up. But like we basically like spent like all night hanging out, just like playing through the entirety of the game, like from start to finish. Um, and it's funny because the game is like I think like 6 to 8 hours long. We played through the entirety of the 6 to 8 hours, and like even after we beat the game, we kind of like went through and like found some of the like secret stuff, um, the like stuff that like doesn't appear in like the main game. Like isn't necessary to find, but stuff you can find regardless, and like really neat stuff. Some of like the neater parts of the game were like there was this like so yeah, whatchamacallit, one of the cool one of the like neat kind of like things is like there's a part where like you're walking through like the town and you find like a cell phone on the ground and that's like ringing, and then you like go to pick it up and it's like somebody calling you and they say like um I can't remember what they say, but something really threatening, and then like an eye appears on the phone and the phone breaks, and then as soon as like the phone goes down, like somebody attacks you from behind. um is like something like really really creepy. There's like other stuff in the game, like occasionally there'll be like random eyeballs in the ground like that you can like you'll see, and like all the enemies in the game, they kill you in one hit. So like a lot of like creepy menacing things can sometimes like be like alarming enough to make you run, but like there's a lot of enemies in the game that won't even hurt you, and you can hardly even call them enemies at that point. They're just aberrations, ghosts, I suppose, spirits. demons, perhaps. Um, but one of them is just that, yeah, there'll be like eyeballs that just appear on the ground. And if you go and like step over them, they just go squish and then they disappear. um, there's like this one enemy that will like uh by the way, it's a horror game, very dark. There's a character, you'll just hear a random lady's scream, and then a body will fall from like the top of the screen like onto you, and she does damage if she hits you, but it's like a woman committing, you know. Um, but the whole that kind of leads to kind of like the whole thing about this game is that you're essentially a young girl looking for her best friend. Um, After some events that happened, and you're basically like out in a small Japanese town all alone. I think like occasionally you have your dog Charo. I think his name is Charo, a little guy that like follows you around and leads you around. Um, but for the most part, you're alone. You're just like a little girl like exploring this town, and like you see these like different ghosts and demons and stuff, and they're all like really like spooky and weird and strange. Like creatures that will be like giant like balls of hair with legs, spider legs, crab legs coming out with eyeballs and mouths kind of like twitching and withering on them, and just like creatures that are entirely just a ball with a giant mouth that will chomp and like go come at you slowly, or like enemies who have like I was gonna say a siren for a head. If you're on the internet, you might know what that is, but shout out to Siren Head, Slimy Swamp Ghost on Twitter.com. Check out his art. It's pretty cool. But anyways, there's an enemy that is literally just like a red light that just like spins in a circle. And I don't know if those enemies are like mean to you, but there's another enemy I think I've noticed in the first game. I don't know, remember it was in the second game, but it's like a statue, like a soldier, like a statue of a soldier. Um, like an older like from some older time like soldier, and like he'll just like slowly like walk around, and like when you get when you're getting like close to like an enemy, or an enemy is coming towards you, you get this like heartbeat thing that happens. Like you hear like an audible heartbeat, and I think also like the controller, if you're playing on PS4, will like shake. um but the screen starts like going red, and you have to like run away and find a place to hide. That's like the main mechanic in the game. There's no fighting enemies really in the game for the most part. um but with this enemy, like you'll start like seeing red and it'll start beating. But if you go up to the enemy, like it can't hurt you. Like he's just like walking around. um which is really kind of like something neat. I really like the game a lot. It just like it's just so strange. Like it's so like anti AAA. Coming from like a studio that's kind of like an indie offshoot of a like a pretty like somewhat well known like AAA like Japanese studio. Um, that make like a lot of like really pretty high budget games. Um, but yeah, it's a really cool game. I ended up like playing this like game with my friend all night, and we went through all this stuff, and I just remember like I always like think back to it, and I'm like, oh man, I just want to like go back to those days where I could just like hang out with a friend and just like just play a game all night. It just what a good time in life. Anyways, yeah, so that was Yomawari. When I come back, I'd like to talk a little bit more about this funny little game called Ebe, another game I learned about through Let's Players. But this one I actually found out about through a little known YouTuber, not very well known. Not a lot of people would know him if you mentioned him. Definitely not. His name's Markiplier. Um, but yeah, I found out about this game through Markiplier, a very popular RPG Maker type game called Ebe. So we're gonna listen to some music, and then I'll come back and we'll talk about it for a little bit. Stay tuned. What's up, gamers and gamettes and other people who don't play games? Uh, that includes my parents who are probably listening right now. Hey, parents. Hey, mom and dad. Uh, anyways, what you've been listening to is the soundtrack from the game Ebe, a game that came out back in 2012. I honestly don't know entirely a lot about this game and the production of this game, but trust me when I say that it's a very beautiful game. Um, One of my favorites. Um, but I think of all the games that were made in RPG Maker and played by the various YouTubers that I watched who played them. This game probably like struck the biggest chord with me. There are a few other games that were like that. Two of them being Witch's House and oh, why am I forgetting the other one? Witch's House and why am I forgetting the other one? Excuse me. Witch's House and Yume Nikki. That was a big one. Oh, actually, the one I was thinking about is Mad Father. So the ones that I watched of them were Ebe, Mad Father, and Witch's House. All three very fantastic games. Eve, for some reason, really stuck out to me a lot. There are a few other pretty popular games, two of them being Yume Nikki and Ao Oni. I always thought Ao Oni looked really... Ao Oni, I think that's how you say it. I'm not good at pronunciation. But yeah, those games were particularly very popular. I'm not entirely sure if Yume Nikki is an RPG Maker game. I'm pretty sure it is, but it could just be a regular Game Maker game. I know for the longest time I thought Undertale was an RPG Maker game, which is absolutely false. It is a Game Maker game. But yeah, Yume Nikki was really big. I'm really surprised I didn't get into Yume Nikki. I have a lot of concepts in my brain, like creative things, creative stories that align with kind of the sensibilities of Yume Nikki and the story and themes of Yume Nikki. I don't know too much about it, but I do know some small things, and I just don't know how I've never really came across it, like or played it or seen it played or anything. But I really like the community based around it. I'd like to find it really quick, but maybe I will after the break. Though there was something I promised from last break or last talk to say after the break, and I totally forgot what that was. But yeah, that's just how it is. I have a terrible memory, if you didn't already know that. Anyways, what were we talking about? Yume Nikki. Neat game, pretty cool. Never played it, never watched it. But I'd like to in time. Ebe was the game that struck the biggest chord with me. I'm actually watching a friend play it right now, my good friend Emmett. Hey, Emmett. I don't know if you're listening right now, but in a little bit, I'm going to spoil the game a little bit, so I'm going to ask you and others who do not want to be spoiled to Ebe to leave. I'll let you know when. But the game in particular, I think, is like really... really strikes a chord with me. I think it's just because it's so... I'm a horror fan. I'm a horror freak. I consider myself goth. I have a lot of goth sensibilities. I love horror. I love darker subjects, darker things. I find beauty in dark things. I think one of the things I remember is kind of related to this as watching Game Grumps play Bloodborne. And Dan, who was on the show at the time, and is still, but this is the Dan era of Game Grumps, talked about how he said the colors in Bloodborne looked muddy, and like talking about like how like not beautiful they are in comparison to like games with more vibrant colors. And I don't feel the same. Like I feel like almost exactly the opposite. I think like the darker palette of Bloodborne really lends to its own kind of like really stark beauty. I mean, there's also parts of Bloodborne where they're like really bright, beautiful purples and reds. And I think those parts really work well also with like those muddier, browner and blacker kind of like palettes. Um, but yeah, Abe on its own like is like so dark and playful. Like it's a good mix of like kind of like lighter things and like darker things. You see that in like mixed with like the character Eve, even though she's in a horror hell world. She sees there's a few things that she sees as a lot more innocent that Gary, another character in the game, in turn sees a lot more horrific. That including being the dolls that you find throughout the game. Um, and I really like those kind of like cute and scary sensibilities. Something I really really like about things like Madoka Magica. The labyrinths that you see in Madoka Magica are such a like clash between cute and horror, and I think it's really neat. Um, but yeah, my favorite character actually in like Ebe uh, is a good example of this. She's very cute but also scary. I'll get into that a little bit later, but her name's Mary, and it's interesting. I feel like I have like such a connection to the name Mary. And games, I'm sorry, not games similar to it, names similar to it. Mary, Maria, Marie. Um, I have various family members whose middle names are Maria and Marie, and I think I won't talk about it too much, because I don't want to talk about things they don't really necessarily want to talk about, but themselves. But I think some of them don't really like the names. And I don't know. There's a for some reason I find the names like really like beautiful. Um, there's also I think part of me really likes the names partially because Silent Hill 2. Two of the main characters are named Mary and Maria, and that might be like why I like the names so much. That I'm not entirely sure if it's like I'm more connected to them because of that game, or I'm connected to that game and those names because of my personal background, I guess. Um, but yeah, I think they're very beautiful names, and I think usually when a character's named Mary, I ended up just like immediately attaching to them because I'm like, yo, character has a cool name. There's actually like random aside, but there is this lady in San Francisco when I went out like uh, to go hang out with my aunt and uncle and their kid who is my cousin. Um, and we went out and I went to this like street market thing, and there's this lady there that I ended up kind of like chatting with, and who she kind of like had like odds and ends, bits and baubles, and then she had like things she like refurbished. She had like a old like bedside like radio slash alarm. It was like a mix of like a few. It was a very like old fashioned, but like she like touched it up, and I was like, oh, like I don't have the money for it, but like that's beautiful. Like if I had like the money, I would absolutely like love to have something as beautiful as that, and you did a really good job. And she was really nice, and she ended up giving me this little charm. It's like a skull with a little like kind of like dress and like little like needle legs that I like to wear around my neck a lot. And her name was actually Mary. And I don't really believe in destiny, but it's just so interesting. I feel like that name has come into my life so many times in different ways and really like affected me. I don't know why. It's just very strange. And though I don't believe in destiny, I think it's really interesting. But yeah, I'll talk about it for a sec. And by the way, to my friends who are listening, Jade, Harvey, Emma, and Mishka, of the ones who haven't beat the game, don't know all there is to know about the game, I would suggest not listening to this next part. I'm going to talk about spoilers for a sec. But yeah, I'll give you a sec to go off, go grab a drink, go do whatever you got to do. Mute, deafen the stream, whatever you got to do. Anyways, so yeah, Ebe is a very dark game. And one of the essential things that happens in the game is, and one of the things I remember the most is the endings. And there, I think it's an anime or a manga. It's like all endings lead to doom. I don't know what that anime is. I've never like read it or watched it, but like that is kind of the ending to Ebe. There's no happy endings in a way. They're all like bittersweet. The two endings I can remember in particular, I think the third ending, I don't think it's happy at all. But the two endings that are, I think, the most canon, or the ways that like you could be the happiest, end up the happiest in that game, is essentially there's three main characters, and you have three main characters: Ebe, Gary, and Mary. So in one ending, Ebe and Mary escape from this realm of art. Um, and they kind of, I think, kind of grow up. Assumingly, I think like Mary's taken in by the mom and dad, and she becomes like a sibling to like Ebe, I think. And then the other ending, essentially, Mary is stuck in. Oh, and in that last ending, Gary is stuck basically in this hell world. In the other ending, um, Gary is allowed to leave with Ebe, and then Mary is stuck in this hell world, and that is probably the most canon ending. It's so weird to call this like using like very fandom terms, but yeah, I mean like that is I think the most real ending, because um, Mary is actually kind of, she's technically not real. She's a construct of the painter who made all the paintings that make up this hell world. She is a painting that he created, and she's kind of destined to never really exist as her own self. It's really, really sad, and it's like one of those things where like every time I think about the game, I always think about the endings, because I don't think there's an ending in a game that's ever like struck me as that sad before. Like it's something as like, as a creative, even though I really love dark, sad stuff, um, the creative part of me that wants to create stories, I don't know if I have the heart in me to like do that to my own characters. Because my own characters are very, very like close to my heart. Um, it's like, yeah, it's really something. But you know, at least if I can't do it to my own characters, I can enjoy it in other things. Anyways, that's it for that. I'm gonna stop talking about Ebe and stop spoiling it. So if people want to keep listening again, you can let them know. You can come back. But yeah. Now that I've talked about that, I'd like to talk about another game in a little bit. But first, I'm gonna play some music from that game. A neat little game that I really love, and I hope a lot more people learn about in the coming years. A game called Cry of Fear. Give this song a listen, and I'll see you in a little bit. Hey everyone. What you were just listening to was some music from Cry of Fear, which is the game I like to talk a little bit more about right now. But before we do that, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Becca Fest 2022. It is happening on May 13th, 2022, because it is Becca Fest 2022 on a Friday, 7 p.m. In Studio One in Marcus Hall. Um, Studio One in Marcus Hall. I saw Studio One and I figured it was like Studio One, like the big one. Um, so wherever Studio One in Marcus Hall is, I'm not a Becca major, so I don't really know Marcus Hall very well besides the radio station. But if you know what Studio One in Marcus Hall is, you know. Um, yeah. Also, by the way, if you want to send in submissions, they're already open, but they close on April 27th. So go ahead and send in your stuff. It has to be stuff from I think this semester and last semester. Uh, so go ahead and do that. I'm also a cinema major, but I'm gonna be turning in some of my stuff because I'm in Becca classes. So try it out. Even if you're a cinema major or a business major or whatever. Anyways, for people who aren't at SF State and are listening outside of that, I'd like to talk a little bit about Cry of Fear before I get out of here. Cry of Fear is a fantastic game made in 2012 by a team known by Psych Stellar. They're a Swedish studio headed by dudes who I normally know the name of but can't remember right now, but they are fantastic people. In fact, the main character, Simon, he is actually modeled after, I think, a picture of one of the devs on the team. They're a very small team. They made the game with whatever budget they had around. Nothing like I don't think they might have been given like a state fund, like Swedish game making fund. I think one of them was at college at the time, because there's actually a college in the game. Actually, now I think about it, I think the college is based on a college they went to before. I don't know if they were in college at the time, but the game is free. You can play it on Steam. It is a Gmod, or actually, no, that's wrong. It's a Half-Life 1 mod. So it runs on the Golden Source engine, which, if you don't know, um, that's pretty old. It came out in 2012, around the time Eve also came out, but it was still made on the Golden Source Half-Life 1 mod engine system, uh, which is really crazy considering Half-Life 2 came out like a decent amount of years before Cry of Fear came out. So it could have been made on that engine, but I think like they'd been working on it for a really long time, and it was already started on the Half-Life 1 engine, and I think they just wanted to keep it that way. But if you don't know, it is free, but it is kind of hard to get working because it is an older game on an older engine. So expect some of those problems. Um, that's just how it is. But it's a free game. Like, if you're gonna have problems, like if it like costs money, it's like, oh, that's kind of annoying. But it's a free game, and it's an amazing game, and it has amazing music. I've used literally just listened. But check it out. It's a game that's really close to me. I think. I mean, I've talked about it before, but it appeals to a lot of my sensibilities. It's very similar to Silent Hill as a franchise. A lot of the enemies are very like Silent Hill inspired. There's an enemy that's very similar to an enemy in Silent Hill 2. Um, in Silent Hill 2, they're like, I forget what they're called. They're like floating bed enemies that attack you from above. And they like fly around. There's like an enemy in Cry of Fear that they're like strapped to beds and they're flying around and they shoot projectiles at you. Um, One of the amazing things about Cry of Fear is that like Silent Hill, specifically Silent Hill 2, and definitely the other Silent Hills, but I mostly know Silent Hill 2. The enemies kind of like are inspired by and encompass the psyche of the person they're tormenting. And in this game, the creatures, like in Silent Hill 2, they're tormenting James Sunderland. Excuse me. My throat's getting dry. In this game, there's tormenting our main protagonist, Simon, who is, from what you can see when you start playing the game, a very unassuming guy. He kind of has an air about him, his model and stuff. He looks like just kind of a normal dude, which people often make jokes about in video game culture about which he's not quite like it, but the typical male bald-headed male kind of like protagonist. He's a little bit different. He's got his key features like his hoodie that's usually up, and he looks very like exhausted and dank. He's a very troubled man, and he, despite the fact that I think his like maybe his design overall could be considered kind of boring, I can't help but really find like a charm in his design, and I think that partially goes with what you experience in the game with him. Oh my god. I'm sorry. I have to like go and like drink some water because my throat is really killing me. I will be right back. I'm gonna play a song for a sec. Here, give me 1 second. I'm gonna play a song called Brandon from Cry of Fear, and then we'll tie things up. See you in a sec. Hey everyone, welcome back. I'd love to talk more, but unfortunately, I really have to let in our next show. Not unfortunately, really. Unfortunately for me, but fortunately for you, you guys are going to be listening to Small Talk, a great show where we talk about things. I don't. I'm not part of it. They are, but really hope you enjoy it. Yeah, I'm glad we got to talk a little bit about like Let's Plays and stuff, and Let's Play games I discovered from Let's Players, because I think that's a very essential part of a lot of like horror games I discovered. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this show. Next week we'll talk about something different. But thank you for listening. My name is Jackie, or Ghostus, and you have been listening to Experience Points on KSFS. So you know what they say, here at the station, embrace the chaos. See you later.